Okay,
I'll have to find a 12-year-old in the neighborhood to help me.
yes, you will. Should I post to one of you?
That'd be lovely.
Afternoon, Ron.
Hello, Jim. Is my mic on?
Yep.
Great, thank you.
Martin, your sound is not coming through.
Good afternoon, directors. I have confirmation of quorum for the Wednesday, September 21st SRD meeting. I'll call the meeting to order. First Nations acknowledgement. I acknowledge that we are located on the traditional territory of the Lakota speaking people. And can I have the adoption of the agenda, please?
Move adoption.
So moved.
Moved by Lee and second by Evans. Any additions? See none, call questions. Anyone opposed? See none, carried. And just for directors online virtually, Directors Cornfield, Evans, Moglove are in attendance today. There are no petition delegations. Can I have a motion to receive the minutes of the August 17th meeting?
Motion?
Moved by Cornfield, and it was Davis was seconded, I think. Any errors, omissions? See none, call questions. Anybody opposed? See none, carried. Any business arising?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Director Lee.
I'm just wondering if we've received any response from Director Cornfield's motion last meeting about our letter to Federal and Provincial Treaty Advisory Committee concerning the lack of process by the Ministry of Indigenous Affairs on land issues, etc.
Go to staff. Of course, no, we have not, according to staff, Director Lee.
Thank you.
Director Cornfield?
Thanks for the question, Brenda. I did receive last week when I was at UBCM an email or text asking to meet about the Cortez treaty issue anyway, and I told him I would get back to him this week because we were all busy at UBCM, so I'll keep the board posted as opportunities come up. That was for Clahoose.
Okay. Cool. Any other business arising? Call questions. Anybody opposed? Carried. No public considerations. Notice of motion. Chair's report. just a couple quick things. UBCM, of course, last week. Attended a discussion on future housing decisions first thing Monday morning. In between that, I had a phone call from MP Rachel Blaney. Housing issues, not just in the SRD area, but Gold River after the fire we had the previous week with the 3 mobile homes being burnt. Attended the TLA reception that evening where the Minister of Forestry spoke. It's always a nice event to go to, and usually the minister or staff are there to speak. So it was very good. Tuesday, unfortunately, I couldn't make the hospital board meeting with Chair Cornfield and Vice Chair Kettler. I couldn't make that meeting because I had another meeting that, well, actually the health board was running late, so I had to run to my other meeting. Anyways, I wasn't there to support Chair Cornfield on that. Mr. Osborne, we talked about the forestry and aquaculture concerns in the North Island and the regional district. And the big topic there, of course, is we need consultation with local government. In the afternoon, I sat in the connectivity discussion, which was very lively. They had a board, a panel there of TELUS and Shaw and Connected Coast, and CEO Mark Tatchell from TASIS was there. It was very lively, as lots of questions pointed towards them afterwards. Hydro, Director Davis and Colburn, and I sat in with my CO from Gold River, since our CO here was in another meeting discussing the concerns on hydro, just mainly last winter, but the ongoing concerns in the future. We all had an opportunity to put our thoughts together on what we would like to see in the future. Resolution portion on Wednesday, Thursday was really good. Lots of resolutions towards small rural communities on fire, BC ambulance, safety, housing. So it was really good. And I know Director Moglove was chairing that portion, and she did a fantastic job. The only other thing I want to add, October 12th, our next SRD meeting will be our last meeting before the election. And it should be nice to see the room maybe even half full with directors, so food for thought. That's my report.
Move receipt.
Moved receipt by Director Cornfield. Second by Director Evans. Any discussion? Seeing none, call question. Is anyone opposed? Carried. Committee reports. First committee report, Electoral Area Service Committee. Motion for their minutes for the August 17th meeting.
Second,
So moved.
second,
Abram and Lee, thank you. Any discussion? Call questions. Anybody opposed? Carried. Staff reports. Stolen permit for DV 4D22 Beckley. Motion to receive the report from the CEO.
move receipt, move receipt.
Second.
Lee and Abram, thank you. And I'll go to CEO.
I have actually one little correction to the staff report. The staff report gives the wrong name in the lead to the staff report. It's actually on Colwyn Road, COLWYN Road. Not what's listed there, Colin or something. It's correct in the DVD permit though,
Okay,
but not in the report.
okay, thank you. Could be just typing error. Okay, thank you. And I'll go to CEO.
Nothing yet, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. On receipt, call questions. Anybody opposed? Seeing none, carried. And item B, development variance permit DV 4D22 as attached in the staff report, August the 3rd, be approved and the corporate officer be authorized to issue permit.
Move approval and all of B.
Director Lee, seconder.
Second.
Director Abram, thank you. Electoral areas only. Anyone opposed? Carried. Item 2, Hagel subdivision flood plan. Motion to receive the report from the CEO.
Move receipt.
Lee, seconder.
Second.
Abram, and I'll go
Second.
CEO.
Nothing to add, Mr. Chair.
Gil, on receipt then, I'll call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. Item B, board authorized portions of section 219, conveyance to EH 76306 and EB 84485 as attached in the August 3rd report from the CEO, and the chair and corporate officer be authorized to execute the application document on behalf of the SRD.
Move the recommendation.
Gil, seconder.
Second, Wally.
Thank you, Director Wally. Electoral areas only. Anyone opposed? Carried. Noise Control Service, Electoral Area A. Motion to receive the report from the CEO.
Move receipt.
Wally, seconder.
Second.
Lee, thank you, and I'll go CEO.
Nothing to add on this, Mr. Chair.
Gil. Therefore, I'll call question on receipt. Is anyone opposed? Carried. And item B, that a further report on draft bylaw be prepared for establishing a noise control service for electoral area A.
Move recommendation.
Dr. Wally, second. Second, Abram. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call questions. Anybody opposed? Carried. Strengthening Community Service Program, Round 2, grant that distribution. Motion to see the report from the CEO.
Move receipt.
Wally? Second. Evans? And I'll go CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Renee will speak to this.
Good afternoon, Chair and Directors. The report is before you today to announce the successful grant application from the UBCM Strengthening Communities COVID Restart Program. This was the second grant application submitted in partnership with the City of Campbell River, the Campbell River and District Coalition to End Homelessness, and several community social service agencies. An evaluation of the activities and services provided in the first grant was completed in March to help inform the second grant application. This evaluation and proposed grant activities were presented and approved by the board in April. The application was submitted, and in August, the province publicly announced the successful grant awards. There are agreements with social service agencies to deliver the grant-approved programs. These agreements are beyond staff signing authority and are before you today for consideration.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions? Director Davis.
Thank you.
No sound.
You muted, Martin.
Check your volume on your computer.
No luck, Martin? Okay, you keep playing, we'll come back to you. Director Evans and then Colburn.
Thank you. And thank you for the update, and great news to hear that we were successful in this, in receiving this additional grant. I just have a couple of questions. On page 3, it's talking about, under the Campbell River and District Food Bank, establish a peer-based program. I was just wondering if I could understand a bit more about what that means. And then if I may just ask you as well, when it's talking about the extension of the services into Campbellton, does that also include the BIA, an extension beyond the defined area of downtown BIA? So are we looking at an area that takes us through to Ironwood as well? Just trying to understand what the coverage is with the new funding. Thank you.
All right, I'll tackle the Campbell River and District Food Bank. The peer program they have there is they want a few hours each week with people with lived experience to help work at the food bank to deliver and disperse the food items. And then the second piece, the BIA does have currently activities beyond the downtown core for public spaces, as well as some other commercial businesses who have chosen to participate in the program. It's like a matching program with this particular program. Or with the grant funds, 50% comes from businesses who are participating in the program, and 50% was coming from the UBCM grant. So the BIA would have a really good outline of which businesses have chosen to participate, and now they're expanding that into the Campbellton also under the same model.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Director Davis, how are you doing with? No, you're still muted. No, can't hear you. Sorry, Martin. Okay, I'll come back to you. Director Colburn and then Adams. Director Colburn.
Good afternoon, all. I am having some issues with my other screen here, so I can't pull it up right now, but my notes say, I think it was in the summary of activities report, Vancouver Island West Mobile Outreach, and the item number was 104,000. I'm just wondering, if you can tell me a little bit more. I think it said Sayward and Gold River on there, but I was wondering about any opportunities for a TASIS inclusion in that, as people were already going as far as Gold River. And I know that our friends to the south, like the rest of us, have people with mental health issues and suffering from homelessness. So I'm just wondering, I couldn't see it anywhere in there, and I'm just wondering if you could give me some more information about that, why they weren't included to go on further to TASIS.
Thank you. The KDC, who is facilitating that program, has looked at different ways to address some of the other regions, and it's a trailer that's being pulled behind a truck, and so it was just determined that it wasn't that feasible to take the trailer up to TASIS. I know there's been some conversations about how to maybe get some individuals from TASIS to Gold River to provide service. So I know that we've asked the KDC, who runs both of the mobile programs, to look at how services could be delivered in some of our other areas. They started with Gold River and now have moved on to Sayward. So moving forward, Gold River and Sayward will each have services delivered 1 day a week, is the plan moving forward, and exploring some of the other smaller communities as well.
Thank you for that. Really appreciate that information. And if it's any road issues, we know where to advocate. So thanks.
Thank you. And I'll go to Director Adams.
Thank you, Chair. Well, certainly appreciative of the $382,300 grant funding. It does seem that we are annually going cap in hand for funding, and I'm wondering if the chair or the CAO would deem it appropriate to have a subsequent motion for the chair to write a letter sort of requesting that these funds be established in perpetuity so that there is some stability of the programs that are being established. It's very difficult to maintain permanent staffing to administer these programs when they are on a temporary short-term basis.
I totally agree with you. After this motion, if you have another subsequent, Director Adams, definitely.
Thank you.
Just turn your mic back here.
There you are, Director Davis. You're in double screen now, but that's okay.
Better than nothing.
Go ahead, Martin.
No comment. I was just trying to get it working. That's all.
Okay, thanks. Chair Bart, Anything else on receipt? I'll call question then. Anyone opposed? Carried. And item B, the
If I could have
2022.
a subsequent chair?
Okay, you want to do that first?
At your pleasure.
Okay, so let's go through, yeah, we'll just go through B, C, and D, and then we'll come back to you. Okay, so on item B, the 2022
Move
finance
item
plan
B.
be amended.
Move B.
Evans, who did you hear, Tom? Evans and Cornfield. Any further discussion? Call question. Anyone opposed? Carried. Item C, the chair and corporate officer be authorized to execute a service agreement.
Move C.
Evans and Cornfield. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. And item D, the chair and corporate officer be authorized to execute a service agreement with the district council on behalf of the SRD.
Move D.
Evans and Cornfield. Any discussion? Seeing none. Anyone opposed? Carried. And Director Adams.
Thank you, Chair, and my apologies for not having it written out, so I'll try to wing it. That the chair be supported to draft a letter to the UBCM Strengthening Community Service Grant Program, requesting consideration of ongoing permanent funding for these grant initiatives.
Second.
Second by Director Evans. And we'll just wait, make sure Edie catches up on us. She says she's good. Any further discussion? We'll take a second to type it up. We'll just wait until Edie gets it done. Okay, Director Adams, it's on the board. That's
If you think if the CAO and yourself as chair deem that appropriate, I'm good.
Yep, Director or CO puts his thumbs up. He's good, I'm good. Director Evans, I believe, seconded.
Yes.
Any discussion? See none, I'll call questions. Anybody opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. Grant opportunity, disaster risk reduction category 1. Motion to receive the report from the CEO. Anybody want to move the motion?
Move receipt.
Move receipt. Thank you, Director Lee. Seconder,
Second.
Director Adams, and I'll go to CO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe Sean is online. I hope he is.
Through the CAO to the board, I believe Meredith or Jacob have this one, but if they're not present, I can definitely speak on their behalf.
Tom, go ahead. Go ahead, please, Sean.
Oh, okay. So through the chair to the board, so speaking on behalf of my colleague Meredith, this is an application to Category 1 of the Disaster Risk Reduction Climate Change Adaptation Grant. We have been doing a couple reports on the Walters Hall Community Center, which is in need of some repairs. So using this grant and some gas tax funding that we have available, we'd be able to develop a shovel-ready plan with community consultation on the design, of course, but to have a shovel-ready plan in our pocket should further funding become available to actually do the work and reconstruct the facility so that it is earthquake and tsunami proof to better serve the community for both the day-to-day and disaster function.
Thank you very much, Sean. Any questions? On receipt, then I'll call questions. Anyone opposed? Oh, Director Davis, go ahead.
Sure, I was just gonna ask, what would be the plan for this vertical evacuation structure? Like, what would the capacity be, and would that be useful?
Through the chair to Director Davis, that is something that we'd have to incorporate into the building, but thinking a strong, structurally sound building with a rooftop available for people to evacuate on. Traditionally, vertical evacuation structures are a standalone platform with stairs. You know, kind of think about that lookout at the Malahat. Well, that's not a tsunami one, but sort of similar to that design. However, there have been cases where they can be integrated into community buildings as well, because, you know, as the sea level rises in the future, we'll need a nice rooftop vertical evacuation point for these folks on Walters Island.
Okay, if I could also ask Sean, what is the elevation of this site?
That's a tough one. Sorry, I don't know that off the top of my head. I know that it is within our tsunami inundation zone for the Cascadia subduction zone, and that it's the tsunami wave actually doesn't affect the building currently, but it does surround it.
Thanks for that.
Cool. Any other questions on? Say none, I'll call question. Anyone opposed? Carried. And item B, that application be submitted for the 2022-23 Disaster Risk Reduction and Climate Adaptation Category 1 Grant Program.
Second or first? Move?
First, second, third?
Whatever, yes.
Moved by Director Evans, second by Director Cornfield. Any further discussion? Say none. Anyone opposed? Carried. Item 6, grant opportunity, disaster risk reduction, climate adaptation. Motion to receive the report from the CEO.
Move receipt.
Evans, seconder.
Second.
Cornfield, and I'll go CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sean will speak to this one as well.
Go, Mr. Goodman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So through the chair to the board, this is a Category 2 grant application request. So the previous request was on a planning application. Category 2 falls under the public education and land use portion of disaster risk reduction. And the proposal is to develop tsunami education brochures in the 3 dialects of the traditional Nuu-chah-nulth language, paint our tsunami muster point sea cans with First Nation art. Director Davis can speak to how successful this has been in Tassis and how much favored they are in the community when they have these art pieces that focus on the local community culture. And under phase 2 of our tsunami mapping project, Ocean Networks Canada is developing a wonderful local documentary on the history of First Nation stories of earthquakes and tsunamis on Vancouver Island. So we would contract with Ocean Networks Canada to do a film tour of that documentary on several West Coast communities.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Any discussion? I'll call question on receipt then. Anyone opposed? Carried. And item B, that the application be submitted for the 2022 Disaster Risk Reduction Climate Action Adaptation Category 2 Grant Program for enhancing emergency response on behalf of the local government of First Nations entitled identified in the September 16th report.
So moved, Davis.
Thank you, Director
Second,
Davis.
Colburn.
And Coburn, thank you. Any further discussion? Call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. Item 7, Director Audit Report. Motion to receive the report from the CEO. Moglove, seconder.
Second.
Cornfield, and I'll go CEO. After receipt of the report, so we're just motion to receive the report. Anything to add?
Not at this time from staff, Mr. Chair.
Go. On receipt, Director Adams. You muted, sorry, Andy.
I will have a subsequent.
Thank you. On receipt, I'll call questions. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, carried. And I know Director Abram does have a subsequent first, so go ahead, Director Abram.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So without prejudice, I'd like to agree to pay back the amount in the report from the Finance Department of $8,640 for meetings that were said to not meet the criteria. And I hope that this will put an end to this issue. I will submit the check in full today.
Okay, moved by Director Abram, second by Director Cornfield. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. And Director Adams.
Thank you, Chair. And I want to preface this by saying that this is not personal in any way, shape, or form, but more a fiduciary responsibility. And the motion will be that the CAO be instructed that failing receipt of payment in the amount of $8,640 by September 22nd, 2023, no further monthly stipend, expense, or meeting pay claims be paid to Director Abram until the balance has been fully repaid to the SRD Finance Department.
Second by Director Moglove. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Director Abram?
Yes, the date is unreasonable. We have a mail service. I have to mail that check today. It will not go out until tomorrow, which is the 22nd, and it would not be received until probably the 23rd, possibly the 24th of September. So, and I believe the amount is incorrect. So I would have to vote against the motion, although I have already totally agreed to the concept.
Okay, so the 8640 is,
I think the motion is redundant.
okay, well, the 8640 is the correct amount, if I'm not mistaken. As far as the dates and that,
Oh, yes, you're correct. You're correct. I'm sorry.
so Director Adams, any, okay, CEO wants to speak first.
I think, Mr. Chair, the date is moot there. I think the 22nd is fine. We don't regularly make payments till the end of the month anyways. So as Director Abrams said, if the check's mailed in, takes a few days, we would certainly get it before the end of the month anyway. So I don't think the date is an issue in this resolution.
And if I could say, there is also the option that it could be a certified check or a bank draft.
That would complicate it even further, but
Okay, so that's not
I
in the
would be
motion.
fine to do it.
Okay, it's not in the
Okay.
motion at this time, but that's fine. I've got Director Wally and then Cornfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In my opinion, I think this is inopportune. I believe what the Director Adams is doing is calling into question the integrity, the honesty of Director Abrams. I think that's out of line. Director Abrams has given his word that he's going to pay. I think we should take that. And if in the future there was some untoward thing that was to happen, we can look at this item again. But at this point in time, I think this is disrespectful.
Okay, thank you. And Director Cornfield.
Would it, thank you, Chair, would it, wouldn't it be more reasonable to put by the end of September, if end of September is when we normally issue payments, distribute money, et cetera? Would it make any difference to this motion if that was changed to read by the end of September, which would then give the director plenty of time?
Or just say September 30th.
Yeah.
Director,
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm leaving it at the discretion so that our finance department and the CAO have that ability in the unforeseen circumstances that would be required. If it's not, then it becomes mute. And it's, as I said, this is just a fiduciary responsible motion and then nothing other.
okay, thank you. So if it's okay with the mover, then we'll have a friendly saying September 30th. Okay,
That's fine.
okay, thank you. Any other
Is
discussion
this
on
an
the motion?
amendment?
Sorry, Director.
Is this an amendment? Is this an amendment, Mr. Chair?
No, just a friendly, we just changed the date to September 30th, Director Abram.
Okay, but the other motion has already passed, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
your
so
motion,
the
yes.
first motion is passed.
Yeah,
Yes, okay, so this is a separate motion.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to call question on the motion. Is anyone opposed?
Wally's opposed.
Director Wally?
Abram is
opposed.
opposed.
Abrams opposed.
Davis.
Davis is opposed.
Kerr is
Lee.
opposed.
Kerr?
Lee,
Hearing no more. Motion is carried. Thank you. Moving on to bylaws. Bylaw number 433, Quadrant Links, proposed rezoning. Motion received, report from the CEO. Director Moglove, second by Director Wally, thank you. And then go CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Annika will speak to this.
You.
Thank you, through the chair to the board. The item before you is at the request of the applicant for Quadra Links, a bylaw that currently sits at second reading. Further to the consideration of the bylaw, the applicants have held a public meeting at which they described the proposed use to the public in further detail and took in a number of comments through that public consultation process. Following that, they have requested that the regional district amend the existing proposed bylaw to be more in line with what they had heard through their public comments. You will see that the recommendation in the report is to amend the existing bylaw by deleting the section and replacing it with conditions of use listed before you. The gist of the amendment would be to regulate the operation of the recreational vehicle use to April 1st to October 31st annually, limit the number of RV sites actually to a maximum density of 21 sites per parcel. There's a typo in the recommendation here. So they're asking for 21 sites in total. They would like to provide a 10-meter wide vegetated buffer strip along the property lines, as well as a 30-meter buffer from the wetland. They are restricting the parking, loading, and storage areas and buildings and structures to be screened, and limiting the residential use to one for a caretaker for the property during the season only, and limiting their golf sales or sales to anything related specifically to the playing of golf. Staff supports the amendments to the bylaw prior to the bylaw being considered by the public at public hearing scheduled for November 23rd. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Director Abram?
Yes, thank you. I'm speaking neither for or against this, but I have no problem with it proceeding to the public. I'm glad that the applicants did go to the public in a informal setting and receive input so that they could fine tune their application. The only part that it doesn't quite fit to the original application is G, which is retail sales limited to those items required for the playing of golf. That, to me, adds a commercial component to the RV park as opposed to what it was before, and could, jeopardize the or taint the opinions of the people that may come forward. So I believe they already have facilities, or whatever you want to call them, for obtaining supplies that are required for the playing of golf. So why duplicate it and complicate it? If that was just left out, then I think the rest of it is all fine. And I applaud the applicants, Quadra Links, for putting forward this amendment based on public input, because that's what this is all about. This will be going to the ultimate public input, which will be a public hearing later in the month of November. So if that one piece could be just taken out, retail sales limited to those items required for the playing of golf, then I have no problem with it.
Okay, thank you. And I got Director Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The one thing I recall about recreational vehicle parks was that they do put a lot of pressure on the ferry system in the summer, and this is in the height of tourist season through April 1st to October 31st. So I have some misgivings about how the public will react to that kind of pressure on the ferry system. And I guess we'll hear more about it at the public hearing. But the RV park proposal in another application recently was not supported by the director for Discovery Mainland Inlet. So just have to wait and see, I guess.
Okay, thank you.
What comes up at the public hearing. But that's my main concern is how are they going to transport all these RV units on a ferry that's already packed?
Okay, thank you. Don't see any further hands, so on receipt, I'm going to call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. Item B, electoral areas only. The bylaw 433 be amended by developing proposed section 1126.3 with A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. And with the amendment saying 21 sites, not 20.
I would move, Mr. Chair, Abram, that under conditions of use, which is item B, that would move everything A through F, deleting G.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Wally? And I want to go staff for a comment.
Thank you through the chair to the board. The request of the director, the item E that, or G now, that the director is referring to, has been adopted, has been given second reading previously. It is at the request of the applicant that that provision be within the bylaw. Should the applicant take consideration to the director's request, the applicant can then request that the board consider that at a following meeting prior to the bylaw going forward to public hearing. But it would be at the discretion of the proponent whether or not they want to remove that provision from the bylaw before it's given further consideration, either at public hearing or by the board at third reading. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just going to go to Tom for clarification on what that changes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My understanding is that bylaw 433, which has already had second reading by the board and has been scheduled for public hearing, already has within it provision for retail sales. And again, my understanding is that this amendment would restrict or constrain the type of retail sales that are permitted. I stand to be corrected, though, if that's not right.
Okay, thank you. So I guess my question, then, can we actually change it since it's already in there? You can't.
Mr. Chairman, of course, the board can make whatever changes it wishes. The question I think that's been posed by the Director for Planning is whether the applicant would be in favor of a different proposal moving forward than what they have asked the board to consider. And I can't answer that question.
Okay, thank you. So then my question is, we got a motion from Director Abrams, second by Director Wally, to remove item G. Is that actual something we can do at this time?
I would say, Mr. Chair, again, as Mr. Yates says, the board can do whatever they wish, but that latitude would typically be left to the applicant.
Okay, thank you. Director Abram.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. It was my understanding that the reason that this was coming back to the board at this time was to amend at second reading. And if that's the case, then this is what my motion is doing, to delete item G. That is an amendment to second reading. And it's rather unusual to have this kind of discussion and this issue come to the board as opposed to the Electoral Area Services Committee. But I would assume that that was to expedite the process, and that's fine with me. But I am asking that if we are being asked by staff to bring it forward to amend at second reading, then we're here to amend at second reading. So item G seems to be totally within our purview, not the applicant's purview or anybody else's, but the board's purview. So my motion stands.
Okay, thank you.
I would disagree with Director Abram. I think these are the applicant's amendments, not the board's. It's the applicant's application. These are amendments made by the applicant. Then it goes out to public hearing, and we see what the comments from the public are. I don't know why the board or the committee would make amendments to an applicant's bylaw for then them to take out and support at public hearing. As the director knows, the directors of the public hearing are there to hear the feedback from the community. So if the directors are making amendments to the bylaw and public are, let's say, negatively commenting on those, the applicant is going to turn around and say, that's not the amendment I made. So I think it's unusual that the board is suggesting amendments myself.
Okay, thank you. And I got Director Moglove.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so on this one, I think, if I'm not mistaken, on this particular file, we had to get some legal advice on a procedural matter on process. And I believe it clarified the situation, and we went back to what the CAO and staff had recommended in the first place. On this one, I'm concerned that if we go forward with this with the amendment that is being suggested, and it is against the advice of staff, we're going to get possibly into legal trouble again in terms of process. So I would suggest to Director Abram that he withdraw that particular amendment. Let the public hearing happen on this particular file. There is always opportunity for amendment later after the public hearing, but this is not the time to muddy the waters any further on this particular file. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Moglove. And Director Abram to wrap up.
Yep, to wrap up, just very quickly, thank you for those comments, Director Moglove. What I am trying to do is not muddy the waters, and this particular point, G, will muddy the waters. And what would happen is, okay, it goes to public hearing with G included, and if the public disagrees with it, then the directors of the board at that time will have a choice of denying the application or sending it back to be revised. So what I'm trying to do is avoid the possibility of having it sent back to be revised when I believe, if anything, best case scenario, it was an oversight on the applicant's part to leave this in there from the original second reading. If it had been discussed with staff and the public and everybody more thoroughly, I think it would have probably been removed in the staff report rather than coming forward to us at this time. If you want to leave it in there, fine. All I'm saying is that what you are basically doing is you are adding to the possibility of delaying this process or this application from moving forward because of a simple procedural thing that could be taken care of right now. It's been said over and over again that we have the right to move, to remove or add or whatever at second reading, and that's basically where we're at, is we're at amendment at second reading. So if you don't want to make the amendment, fine. I'm not,
It's you,
I
the one
don't
that
feel
made the
one way
amendment.
or the other.
You're the one that
Pardon
made
me?
the amendment, Director Abram. Okay, I'm going to go
I
to
know, I'd love to make the amendment.
You did.
I'd love to make the amendment. I did, and it stands, and if it wants to be defeated, that's fine. Then, when we come back to the board, if the public hearing decides that they don't want that in there, then it has to go back through another process, and it just extends the time required for the applicant to get his application through.
Okay, I'm going to go.
End of story.
I'm going to go to
That's
staff.
a lot of ifs. Can we call the question?
Just before we call a question, I got staff. I want to have one comment. Aniko?
Thank you, through the chair. I've just received information from the applicant that they are requesting that the retail sales component remain within the bylaw, and that they're fine with it being limited to those items related to playing golf, but they have requested that they be able to sell golf balls, gloves, hats, and related golfing gear within that portion of the property. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Question has been called. Electoral areas only. Anyone opposed? Passed.
I think I'm opposed just because I didn't hear a rationale for not being allowed to sell hats and t-shirts and all that. I don't understand what the opposition is to retail sales there, but
So if I can, just to be clear, and I hope I'm not repeating myself, these are the applicant's request. They then take it out to public hearing, and they, as well as the area directors, listen to the comments from the public. Then there is opportunity for the applicant to amend that, and the directors see what those amendments are. If directors are making amendments to the bylaw, and let's say the public and the applicant do not support that, that puts the directors in a very unique position, is that they're making their amendments to the bylaw that the applicant themselves nor the public want. I think what you do in these instances is you support what the applicant wants, you see what the public input is, and you make changes or not, and then vote on that based on the feedback you've received from the public. So what you're in the process of is editing the bylaw yourselves, taking away from what the applicant wants the public to hear. I would advise that the amendment not be supported. We should not be, directors should not be making amendments to the applicant's bylaw.
Okay, thank you, Seal. So I'm going to call question on the motion, and the motion right now from Director Abram and Wally is everything up to G. G is taken out. I'm going to call question. Is anyone opposed?
I'm opposed.
Wally will be opposed as well, and after listening to the CAO.
Okay, Wally and Lee, so it is defeated. Back to original A to G. Need a motion?
Move A to G. Second.
Abram and Lee, I believe. Any further discussion? See none, call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. Thank you. Item 2, bylaw 461, electoral area C Wharf Services. Motion to receive the report from the CEO.
Move receipt.
Evans and Cornfield, and I'll go to CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm a little puzzled on this, as we seem to be swimming upstream on this bylaw, this service adoption. A number of years ago, the regional district received funding from Transport Canada for capital upgrades to 3 wharves. A condition of that funding was that we establish a wharf service. Those wharves were put into the EA admin as a temporary measure. EA admin is funded by all 4 electoral area directors until a service was established, and the intent was that that service would be paid solely by electoral area C. Throughout the years, at every budget meeting that I've been at, we've been trying to establish a wharf service to put these in. The lack of establishment of the wharf service has delayed us in doing the capital works to these. It incurs greater liability. And finally, this year we had support from the area director, as the other electoral area directors were adamant this year that they wanted that liability removed from the EA admin function. So the area C director made the motion, supported all the votes on it, and then for some reason we'd seen articles and social media that the director was supporting a referendum of the folks, and subsequently saying that there was going to be increased cost of the service, lack of control, and that is what we believe inspired a petition process that basically caused the service assent vote to fail. So we're at a bit of crossroads now, is that we've put it out petition. We have a couple options for the board to choose from. One of them, of course, is if we can't establish the function, we should give the money back to Transport Canada. That is our obligation. We cannot continue to operate the function within the other EAs. It's a cost and liability to them. They're receiving no benefit from the service. And happy to answer any questions.
Okay, on receipt, Director Abram.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Okay, so first of all, I have to say our CEO, with respect, is completely wrong on his assessment of why this failed. It had nothing to do with me. It had to do with a number of people on Quadra Island mainly and on Reed Island that were completely incensed by the fact that I had put it through to move to approval process. So I was the target of the negative comments, not the SRD. And it further moved to the SRD later, of course. But I have to say that the opposition to this proposal was due to a community lack of understanding and feeling that the service was being pushed through without proper consultation. And that came from one of our local media, and a few organizers, not me. I first heard about it when I was called by disgruntled constituents, and in a letter, just excuse me 1 sec here, I just want to turn this off. Sorry. It was community driven, period. To be clear, there is no money coming out, and this is a misconception that is being put forward by our CAO, that there is no money coming out of the EA administration at this time. It is being administered through the EA administration. It's all coming from those three wharves is all coming from the Transport Canada money that's in a bank in separate silos for each wharf. So it's not costing a cent to the EA directors, including this EA director. The service establishment could be dropped at this time and reintroduced at a later date with a better information campaign to assure approval at that time. The service could be established for the 3 TC wharves, and in the meantime, the other wharves would continue to be wholly funded through the Area C Parks function at absolutely no cost to the EA administration function. There's no need to return the wharves to Transport Canada along with the funds. Transport Canada would not want, nor would they take them back. The money has been spent on the wharves and would be part of the return of the wharves should that take back piece happen, which it won't. I know it won't from having talked with Transport Canada. I would suggest that bringing this forward in the new year as a service for the 3 TC wharves with a better public relations campaign, let's call it, I'm sure it would be more likely to pass if done in that manner. And at this point, I would move that it be referred back to the EASC for further discussion and resolution.
We're on receipt right now, Director Abram.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so after receipt, I'd like to make a subsequent.
Okay, I want to go with Director Mogul first.
I was going to make a motion to defer this item to the November meeting or January, meeting in January, so we can
Motion
get to
to
the bottom. of it. Defer to January.
Do I have a seconder?
Second, Baker.
Sorry.
Excuse me, you said we were on receipt,
Hang on,
Mr. Chair.
hang on. We're on receipt. I'm going to call question on receipt first. Anyone opposed, receipt? Carried. Director Mogul.
Thank you. Motion to defer this item to the
Excuse
first
me,
meeting in
Mr. Chair.
January.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. I did ask that I have a subsequent motion immediately following receipt. And Director Moglove butted in and
Point of order,
put
Mr. Chair.
forward a
Point of
motion.
order. Jim, when a point of order is announced, I can tell what my point of order is. The chair has the right to recognize who he wants to recognize. He recognized me first, and if you want to challenge the chair, challenge the chair. But he recognized me. I made a motion to defer to the first meeting in January.
Second by Director Evans. Any further discussion on the defer? Sorry, there is no motion, no discussion on defer. Questions called. Anyone opposed? Carried.
Yes, absolutely opposed. Sorry.
It's already been carried. Thank you. Item 3, bylaw 465, Quadro Island rezoning. Motion received, report from CEO.
Well, that's very interesting.
What's that, Director Adom? What's interesting?
It's interesting that we would have a process where you have already acknowledged in the receipt
We're done.
motion
We're done.
that I would
Director
be
Abram?
well, you asked me the question.
Well, you're talking
You
out of
asked me
turn.
the question.
You're talking on a
I'll
turn.
move, I'll move receipt of 3A.
Thank you. Any discussion or seal? Anything that,
Nothing to add, Mr. Chair?
go, question on 3A? Anyone opposed? Carried. Item B, bylaw 465 being bylaw to amend zoning regulations applicable to Quadro Island now be introduced and read for the first time. Electoral areas.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Question? Anyone opposed? Carried. Item C, 465 be given second reading.
So moved.
Abram.
Second.
Wally. Any discussion? Carried. Item D, public hearing for bylaw 465 be authorized to be held 7 p.m. on Wednesday, November 20th, Quadro Island Community Center, located 9710 West Road, and that the holding of the public hearing be delegated to electoral area directors with the directors in Area C and B.
D.
Be designated as the chair and
D.
vice chair.
D is in dog.
And it's
That was
actually the
D
November.
as in,
Can you guys quit
It's
talking
November.
out of turn, please?
well, you got the letter wrong.
It's area D.
Mr. Chairman, just to note, there is a misprint or an error in the, in the recommendation. Should be November 30th.
Thank you.
Sorry.
So a minor,
It said,
minor change is not November.
excuse,
Director Abram, can you please wait until you're recognized by the chair? Thank you.
okay, could you please
I
notice that
haven't
my hand is
recognized
up?
you. I haven't recognized you yet, please. So
Oh, all
minor,
I'm saying is my hand's up.
there's a minor amendment to the date. It's not November 20th, it's November 30th. With the directors area in C and D designated as the chair and vice chair. Mover and seconder, please.
So moved.
Second.
Director Lee,
Point
Director
of
Wally.
order. Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Do you have a question?
The written copy that I have in front of me says November 30th, not anything else. It says November 30th. And this public hearing was to follow the other public hearing that we already established to be on November 20th. It was to be at the same time to save resources, etc. So my question would be, who changed the date? Because the date that was put forward before was immediately following on November 20th. And now we have a November 30th written, and yet you're saying that it says November 20th. Mine says November 30th.
Okay, so your answer to that,
Does anyone else?
so to answer your question, my hard copy of the agenda in front of me said November 20th. Mr. Yates changed that. He says that should say November 30th. Mr. Yates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When the agenda was originally published, it did say November 20th. We didn't discover that mistake until just a day or two ago, and so we made that correction, and all of the online versions will say November 30th. All of the printed copies made prior to the change being made will still show the 20th. So to get everyone on the same page, just wanted to clarify, the recommendation was for November the 30th, not the 20th. And that's totally our
And
mistake.
that's what I supported.
Thank you. So moved and seconded. Electoral areas only. Anyone opposed? Carried. Item 4, bylaw 471472, Quadra Island OCP and rezoning. Motion to see the report from the CO.
Move receipt.
Second.
Lee and Wally, anything to add, CO? Nothing to add. On receipt, I'll call questions. Is anyone opposed? Carried. Item B, bylaw 471 being Quadra Island OCP plan, bylaw 2007, amendment number 16 be now introduced and read for the first time. Motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Director Wally. Do I have a seconder?
Second.
Thank you, Director Lee. Any discussion? Call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. Item C, bylaw 471 being second reading. Electoral areas only.
Move E.
Thank you, Director Wally. Do I have a seconder?
Second.
Director Lee, thank you. Any discussion? Question? Anyone opposed? Carried. Item D, bylaw 472 being Quadra Island zoning bylaw 1990, amendment number 13 now be introduced and read for the first time. Electoral areas only.
So moved.
Director Wally?
Second.
Director Lee. Any discussion? Call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. Item E, bylaw 472 be given second reading. Electoral areas only. Director Wally? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Director Lee. Any discussion? Call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. Item F, public hearing to consider bylaw 471, 472 be authorized to be held immediately following the public hearing bylaw 465 on Wednesday, November the 30th, 2022 at the Quadra Island Community Center located 9710 West Road. And that the holding of a public hearing be delegated to electoral area directors and directors elect area C and D, designed as chair and vice chair.
Moved, Abram.
Seconder.
Second.
Wally. Any discussion? Any call questions? Anyone opposed? Carried. Item 5, bylaw 473, 2022-2026, financial plan revision. Motion to receive the report.
Move receipt.
Mogul and Lee. And Agucio.
Nothing to add, Mr. Chair.
Okay, nothing to add. We'll call question on receipt. Anyone opposed? Carried. Item B, 473 being bylaw to revise 2022-2026 financial plan and capital expenditure program be now introduced. Director Adams. Second, Moglove. Any discussion? Call question. Anyone opposed? Carried. Item C.
Move C.
Okay, Director Lee.
Second.
Adams, thank you. Any discussion? Call question. Anyone opposed? Carried. And move D
Moved.
by Evans.
Second.
And Lee. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Carried. Item 6, bylaw 474, Surgeon Narrows Community Association tax exemption. Motion received, report from the CEO.
Move receipt.
Evans, seconder.
Wally.
Wally, thank you. And I'll go CEO.
Nothing to add, Mr. Chair?
Go. On receipt, I'll call question. Is anyone opposed? Carried. Item B, bylaw 474, being a bylaw to provide exemption.
Item B.
Thank you, Director Abram.
Second.
Wally,
Second.
any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call question. Is anyone opposed? Carried. And item C, rules be suspended for 474 to be given second and third reading.
Move item C.
Abram.
Second.
Lee, any discussion? Call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. And item D, bylaw 474 being Surgeon Narrows Community Association Property Tax Exemption Bylaw 2023 be reconsidered and finally passed and adopted.
Move item D.
Abram,
Abram.
Second.
Lee, any discussion? Call questions. Anybody opposed? Carried. Item 7, bylaw 475 Royal Canadian Legion tax exempt. Motion received, report from CO.
Move and C.
Abram,
Abram.
Second.
second Lee, anything from CO?
Nothing to add, Mr. Chair?
On receipt, I'll call questions. Anybody opposed? Carried. Item B, 475 being a bylaw to provide exemption.
Move item B.
Abram, seconder.
Wally.
Okay, Director Wally. Anyone opposed? Carried. Item C, rules be suspended for second and third readings.
Move item C. Abram.
Abram, second by,
Wally.
okay, Director Wally. Don't see any discussion. Anyone opposed? Carried. And bylaw 475, Royal Canadian Legion property.
Move item
tax
D.
exemption. Thank you.
Item
Abram,
D. Abram.
seconder.
Wally.
Second.
Thank you, Director Wally. Any discussion? Call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. Correspondence. We have 5
Pull
items.
one.
Move receipt of all correspondence.
Pull
Second.
one.
Moved and seconded, and you want number 1 pulled?
Move two to the end,
2 to 5.
2 to 5.
Second.
Kill.
Oh,
Call question.
sorry.
Question on 2 to
Yeah,
5.
okay.
We're moving 2 to 5. Call question. Anyone opposed? Carried. And item 1, Aerial Medical Service Society based in Cam River. Motion receive.
Move receipt.
Lee, seconder.
Wally.
Thank you. And discussion, discussion, Director Abram.
Yes, only reason I pulled it is, it seems to me that we passed a motion 1 or 2 board meetings ago after we had donated some money to this group, asking a number of questions. And I believe one of them, well, there were 2 or 3 that I remember, but one was, is there an accounting of how much industry is contributing to their operation, how much other local governments are contributing? And there was some mention and question about fee for service in the event that their service needed to be used. So those were supposedly written in a letter to the group. And I'm wondering if you have an answer back from the group?
Commissioner Yates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the board's motion of support back, I believe a couple months ago or more, was to approve the grant request subject to receipt of a detailed budget. We have not received a detailed budget. It has been requested numerous times, but has not arrived yet. That presumably would answer a lot of the questions that the director has just raised. So
Okay.
we do not have an update for the board on this item yet.
Okay, so no update to the board and no money has been sent.
Thank you.
Go. Anything else? Question on correspondence 1, anyone opposed? Carried. Item Q, members report, iced tea recapitalization, letter of support, motion to receive the report.
Move receipt.
Thank you, Director Lilly.
Second.
Second by Director Davis. And do we have the letter?
Mr. Chair, I think we have a motion from Director Davis. Edith has it. Pull it up.
Okay, so on receipt then I'll call question. Oh,
Have
Director Moglove and then Director Abram. Director Moglove.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to let everyone know, if you were not at UBCM resolutions, there was a resolution on this item on Friday of the UBCM convention. The resolution had been pulled from a section that was not going to be considered anyway. So the motion to capitalize the iced tea was on the floor and it passed, if not unanimously, almost close. So I just want to let everyone know that. So it will be going to the province via UBCM.
Okay, Director Abram.
Yes, I was at UBCM. I was also there for that particular motion, resolution, and yes, it was passed, I believe unanimously. If not, one of our previous directors used to say without consent or something. But anyway, it did pass, and I just asked Martin if the group that he's on had already submitted a letter to UBCM, because if he did, it undoubtedly helped that resolution get put onto the floor. It wasn't going to be, and it got passed. So good work, Martin.
Okay, thank you. And Director Davis.
I can't take too much credit for that personally. There was a number of us lobbying regarding it, but I will mention that we did meet with Minister Kalon and discuss the recapitalization of iced tea. I believe there's the mayors of Gold River and Zabalos and RCAO, and we made the case for recapitalization of 150 million. Although I did drop the number 250 million, but I think that's something they wouldn't really consider at this point because they have a number of asks coming from various directions. But so we did get that engagement, and he'll be looking for a business plan coming directly from ICE-T, which will be forthcoming.
Okay, thank you. So on receipt then, I'll call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. So I guess we really don't need any letter support at this time, or is that the copy of the letter went?
Director Davis had asked to put a motion forward from the board, so we had prepared one.
Okay, Director Davis, are you putting forward a motion, or are we good for now?
Well, I'm moving, sorry. Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm moving that we send a letter of support for recapitalization of ICE-T from the Strathmore.
Second.
Okay. Super, thank you. Moved by Director Davis, second by Director Adams. Any discussion?
Yes.
Director Abram?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for putting the motion forward anyway, Martin, because just because it went through UBCM resolutions and was passed does not mean that the province will necessarily enact what the UBCM body decided. So it's good to hit them with a second round of request, and I appreciate you doing that.
Thank you. And I have Director Adams.
Thank you, Chair. And just to let you know, as the former treasurer on the executive for ICE-T, and as the current mayor of the city of Kamel River, the city of Kamel River did submit a letter to the premier, copied to the minister. And during UBCM, I had direct conversations with Premier Horgan and Minister Kalon on behalf of the recapitalization of the Island Coast Economic Trust.
Thank you, Director Adams. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call question on receipt. Anyone opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Sorry, on the motion, sorry. Management report, nothing. New business, no addendum, no closed. Motion
Move
terminate.
termination. So moved.
Moved by Lee, second
Second.
by Adams.
Second.
Anyone opposed? Seeing none carried. Thank you very much, directors. We'll chat in a couple weeks.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Great, coordinated meeting at 3 o'clock.